Hello, I'm Richard Vobes, the Bald Explorer, out on another investigation. And today, I'm in Arundel. I'm looking at St. Nicholas Church. And I'm very brilliantly joined by John Barkshire. Hello, John.
Hello.
Can you tell me, John, what you do?
Well, my family arrived in Arundel in 1814, so we've been here for a little while.
So you're a resident of Arundel?
We're a resident of Arundel, and I'm one of the stewards at the church, and I do Mondays.
Oh, fantastic. Brilliant. And you've agreed to take me and the lovely audience around to have a little look.
I'm very glad to do so.
You're a star.
Yes.
Now, I should say where we are, because we've got this terrific view behind us. We've got the, what is that, the South Tower of Arundel Church?
Of the castle.
Of the castle,
yes. Yes, it is, yes.
Looking resplendent there. And ahead of us, we have the cathedral as well.
Which was built in 1873.
So quite new compared to the castle.
Quite new compared with the castle.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So anyway, we're going to take a lovely walk around St. Nicholas. We need to cross the road. It's very quiet at the moment. So should we do that?
Yes.
So St. Nicholas is set back almost at the top of the hill, just below the cathedral.
It is, but of course originally the London Road was the other side of the church.
Oh, was it?
And in the 19th century, the then Duke of Norfolk did a deal with the town council whereby he moved the road out of his land to where it is now.
Oh, did he?
And in exchange, he built a new town hall.
Ah, right.
So there was a deal which I think would probably please both parties.
Oh, fantastic. Well, and we have actually been in the town hall and done a video there. So, which was really nice. Now, we've just come through this terrific gate, which is got knapped flintwork and beautiful stone around it. And then in front of us, we have the church. Is that pretty much as it was built?
Yes, it is. It was built as a single church. It was built in 1380 by the 4th Earl of Arundel, as they then were. And as you look at it here, you can see the actual church. The left-hand side of it, as we look, is the nave for the general public, and the right-hand side, which we'll see when we get inside, is the chancel for the choir and the choristers. But one should also look slightly further to the right and look at the walls that are there. Because although those aren't the original walls, that is where the College of the Holy Trinity was formed at the same time in 1380, and it was the College of the Holy Trinity which supplied the monks and the canons and the choristers for the church.
Ah, how interesting. And the church serves two different types of congregation or parishioner.
It does, and when we get inside we'll be able to see it more clearly, but from outside, as we look at it, the left-hand bit with the nave and the tower is the Anglican parish church, and the right-hand bit is now the private chapel of the Dukes of Norfolk.
Right. Well, we're going to go in and have a look. So the church, I'm guessing, has been looked after because you have the Duke of Norfolk next door. It's certainly not neglected in any way.
Well, no, but of course the Duke of Norfolk, being Roman Catholic, looks after his chapel, but he has no responsibility for the church here at all.
Right.
Although we have very friendly relationships with the Duke and everybody at the castle, they have no financial responsibility for this end.
So you're still, like most churches, looking for revenue to come
Absolutely
in?
We
Yes,
are.
absolutely.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
So anybody
yes.
generous watching, you know where to dip your pockets in. It's very tall, isn't it? It's very high.
It's very tall. I find it very interesting that it was built in 1380, and as I said earlier, it was built with the chancel at that end, beyond the iron grille that you can see, and the nave at this end. But it was built as a single church. And if you think of that as just being a parish church at that time,
yes,
it is very tall and very big and on a grand scale for a pretty small population of Arundel.
And I guess the population were those who were supporting the church and supplying the church with goods and various things.
Well, they were, but at the time it had built in 1380, it was only a few years after Black Death in 1349,
right,
which had wiped out at least half and probably 2/3 of the population.
Gosh.
And I find interestingly, it killed 5 priests in 1 year.
Oh.
And so I suspect there was neither priest nor congregation at that time.
But still they built this.
But they built this on a very grand scale.
Yes.
And if one looks in front of us and looks at the pulpit there, The pulpit is most unusual in that it's a stone pulpit, and if you think of medieval churches in England, they virtually all have wooden pulpits. But this one is original to the church and was actually built into the pillar. Now, the style of the pulpit reflects very much the style of Winchester Cathedral and New College, Oxford, which were both built by the same master builder. And the style of our pulpit, and indeed of the church, reflects them. We don't think it was the master builder who actually built Arundel Church, but we think it was one of his school, or one of his apprentices, who became a master builder and then built this church and followed or copied the style of his master.
Right. So, in a way, would this be a way of him showing and demonstrating how good he was?
Oh, certainly.
Yes.
And if you look up at the ceiling, you can see the corbels holding up the roof there. They too are original, and they probably are the faces of the master builders or the patrons of the time.
Oh, right.
The only one we can be certain of is one towards the back there, who's holding his jaws and has plainly got medieval toothache.
Oh, I think that's always fantastic when you think that the masons who carved were carving people that they knew.
And they did so often.
Yes. It's so brilliant.
Yes. And then if you just look here and look to the left and right, you can see the choir stalls there. They are Victorian. They were built by Robinsons of High Holborn, but they have got, I think, quite remarkable end pieces here, and here are two birds.
Oh, wow.
And there are birds and animals on each one of the choir stalls as one walks around. You may or may not like Victorian carving, but I think these are good examples of it.
Yes. So talking of the Victorians, I mean, we were always aware that the Victorians did a lot of damage to churches over the years. And there's the argument that possibly if they hadn't intervened, those churches may have just crumbled anyway. What sort of things did the Victorians do to St. Nicholas?
They did a number of things. I mean, they had two restorations of the church, one between 1815 and 1825, which was the first one, and then the second one between 1870 and 1890. And it was the second one which really altered the church to what it is now. They put in a new altar, and a new reredos at that time, new chancel. They put in the choir stalls that I've just talked about, and they took out the old box pews and put in the pews as you can see today. And so within the church itself, they did a pretty massive job, but they didn't alter the outside.
Right.
And so the framework of the church, as you can see, Gothic English perpendicular, is as it was in 1380, and they did really no damage or made no changes to that at all.
Well, that's a relic.
For which we're fairly,
yes.
we're pretty pleased.
Now, I know you told me before we were filming that there are some masons' marks, builders' marks, and graffiti that
yes.
you're keen to show me. And of course, if you come into the church, you can find them yourselves, which is great.
You can. They're all over the place. Every single pillar has got them. But this one, particularly interestingly, has got witches' circles here. Oh. And the theory is that they keep the devil away, because if the devil got into one of those circles, he could only go round and round and would never get out.
I see.
And so it was reckoned to be a way of safeguarding the church against the devil. And very interestingly, we'll see it just as we go out, but there is a parish chest here, which dates back to medieval time, and that has got 6 rings on it, which would have stopped any thief from burgling the parish chest.
It would have put them off.
It would, but also interestingly, it had 3 locks. One for each churchwarden and one for the vicar, because they didn't trust each other. So all 3 had to be present.
Yes.
When
that's good.
The organ originally, when it was installed in 1817, it's a William Hill organ, which was a well-known make at that time, and it was above the altar. And as we go around, you'll be able to see the door where people came out onto the organ loft. And then in the second restoration that I talked about, it was moved from there to here.
And I imagine, I mean, judging by the size of it, it must bellow quite a good sound.
It bellows a very good sound indeed.
Yes. Let's go around and have a look.
You can see more witches' marks.
Oh, yes.
There.
And that's the thing, once you know what you're looking at...
You see them everywhere.
Yes, you start to realise and appreciate. And that's the thing that brings you back, I think, very much to the history, to the people who used it, that there was somebody carving those marks in,
Yes.
because they were genuinely concerned.
And somehow medieval graffiti with the date 1600 is acceptable, but if it had the year 2000, it
Yes.
wouldn't be.
Yes, that's right. It's all been cleared up.
Yes. Now we're looking through at the Fitzallen Chapel and the iron grille that separates it from the Anglican Church. The iron grille was there from the start. When the church was built, I mentioned that the chancel area and the high altar, which is up that end, was for the priests and canons and choristers of the College of the Holy Trinity. And this is where they would have worshipped. As you can see, it's been restored, but very well restored.
Yes, brilliant.
It is well carved and got some lovely choir stalls and stalls for the monks there. And then beyond it, you can see the tombs and the effigies of the Dukes of Norfolk over the years, all of whom have been buried in this chapel. And so originally the iron grille we're looking at separated the chancel and the high altar from the general public at this end. And in 1544, for the dissolution of the monasteries, Henry VIII dissolved the College of the Holy Trinity, and the then Earl of Arundel, the 12th Earl of Arundel, bought what we're looking at through here from the King, and from 1544 onwards, that end has been the private chapel of the Dukes of Norfolk, and is Roman Catholic, whereas this end has been the parish church and is Anglican.
Yes.
And it is unique to have one building divided into two.
Absolutely, I'm sure it is.
Yes.
I know that on the walls you're very proud of your murals.
Yes.
Shall we go and have a look at those as we sort of come to the end of our little wander around? I'm sure there's so much that you could tell us about the church, but
And of course, all churches of this age have an immense amount of history in
Yes.
them. And what I find interesting is the personal history that there is in here, or the history of people.
yes, no, definitely. But we'll finish on these wonderful murals, which the Victorians had some disastrous effect on.
They did. The murals at this end were painted in 1380 when the church was built. They are the seven deadly sins and the corporate acts of mercy. The one just a little bit further along is the coronation of the Virgin, which is 50 years later in about 1430. During the Reformation, they were covered in whitewash. They were not discovered until towards the end of the Victorians, when they were doing their second restoration in the 1870s. They found them, cleaned them, used all the wrong materials and removed most of the colour from them. You can just see a little bit of colour that's left, but sadly they had a lot of enthusiasm but not enough knowledge at that time to do the job properly.
And the whitewash that they had put in at the Reformation actually wouldn't have damaged them too much.
Not at all. It probably preserved them very well indeed over all the centuries in between.
But yeah, for all the good intentions, is the intentions the wrong effect came.
That's right.
Well, we've run out of time, as we do on these videos. There's so much we could have looked at. But John, thank you so much for guiding me around.
Not at all.
And if anybody wants to find the church, then just walk up from the High Street. You'll see it on the right, just before the cathedral. Definitely worth having a look. Spend lots of time, and you may even see John wandering around here.
You might, but there's certainly a lot to look at,
Yes.
and the graffiti and all the other little gems that are hidden away are certainly worth a visit.
Fantastic. Well, join me again next time when I go exploring. Until then, thanks for watching. Leave a comment, do subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.